I've said this many times. If this gets one guy to lift, if it gets one guy to just talk to a girl in the grocery store, I would consider everything I've ever posted and everything I've ever done a victory.
Yeah, so tonight I am joined by DTC, and it is written. So the topic of tonight's discussion is going to be codependency and really just getting your mojo back. So
thanks for having us out here, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
Thanks to you guys for joining us and helping us with the mentoring over on the private community. It's been instrumental. I think. Well, you guys already know this. You've actually met in real life. You've done stuff. I won't say where, but yeah, it's
mostly in the butt.
Yeah, totally. It's butt stuff.
Yeah. So DTC, since this is the first time with us, we try to keep it PG-13, just for YouTube reasons. Otherwise, yeah, that's what I did in the daily roundup. This just before this actually.
You're gonna have to remind me of what's PG-13. I don't know how to censor myself, so you're gonna have to help me out.
Nothing that would get you fired in a politically correct environment.
Oh Christ! So I can't say that. All right, this is gonna be fun.
That's all right. It's all right. We can work with that.
One F-bomb the entire show. All right.
We can work with that, Joe.
No F-bombs.
Going over to our mod note or our show notes here for the prep.
I mean, I have 3 children. I know how to censor myself, but this is going to be challenging because I'm half drunk. But let's do it.
All right, let's do it, boys.
Yeah. So I guess right off the top, you wanted to talk about self-esteem and codependency. Where do you want to begin? Well, first off, for those that don't know DTC, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm DTC. I'm an internet. And I've been.
Oh, see, there we already go. Can't be using the F word.
Jesus, like
I know
this is impossible.
We'll do a little beeping in post. So, like, how do you find the community? What's that?
Let's just start over again. That's fine. We can edit it out.
All right. So, DTC, for those that don't know you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? How did you find the community? The whole 9 yards.
Hi, my name's DTC. It stands for Daddy Thunder. I got that name from the Married Red Pill community. I decided that I wanted to steal the name from someone else. It was Mr. Chad, and I really liked his writing, so I kind of did an homage to him and stole part of his name. And I'm a daddy, and I take great pride in my children and my family, so my favorite role is daddy.
And he doesn't just mean that figuratively. Literally when he does online game. So call me daddy. That whole
Yeah, it's really fun being a daddy. Girls tend to gravitate towards it because they have terrible fathers, and I am a great father figure for them. I just have sex with them too, so it's a little weird, but it's not.
It's a role play. It's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of a fantasy fulfillment. Yeah. So yeah, the whole reason we're doing this episode was all about codependency. I guess we'll go ahead and we'll define it. So codependency is when we are so dependent on another person that it becomes an addiction. It's a need that we must satisfy in a way in order to obtain happiness, really. So we derive happiness by making others around us happy. Typically, it's a partner. It could be a parent. There's a lot of ways that this can go. And one of the things I've seen in the community too is a lot of people mistake codependency with altruism. They think they're being, positive and uplifting and this nice guy and they're not. They're deluding themselves. It's kind of like ego protection. So in reality, they've got low self-esteem. So they pride themselves on making others feel good or being supplicative, being a nice guy. There's a lot of ways like this can go down a rabbit hole if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
In your case, what was some things that you experienced?
It really started when, from my upbringing, and I kind of need to start there. I think it's the way you attach to your parents and the way that you're loved is going to affect the way you are as an adult and how you attach to other people. Attachment styles is something that I, came across in the married red pill community. And they explained, if you have someone you're connecting with who's really anxious and they have a certain attachment style, they can push you and pull you because of, based on how they're feeling. And I just got kind of ignored as a kid, and my attachment styles got really to the point where I was just very anxious when I connected with a partner, and they would feel like I was needy. I would overwhelm them with the need to feel loved and validated. And it started with, having sex at a very young age. I got addicted to it because when girls have sex with you, what they're saying is, they tell you all these nice things. They tell you how attractive you are and how much they, how good they feel. And it just blows up your ego. And it made me feel good. And I didn't have to tell myself, how to feel good. I didn't have to self-validate or self-soothe. I needed someone else to help me do that.
Your thoughts, Written? Oh, for those that don't know, we also have it is Written. He's the top right.
He's David Duchovny.
You got it.
Because I look just like
I'm David Duchovny. Well, look, ultimately, it's true. I think that many of the guys find our community when they've attached themselves too deeply to a woman or just to a partner. And then they come asking questions, which is, why do I feel this way? How do I get out of this? And then it leaves them feeling lost. And that's a very tough place to get out of. And that's what we're here for.
Yep. Can you get a little bit closer to your mic? We're getting a lot of reverb.
Sorry, buddy.
I'm talking about David Duchovny. Okay.
Yeah.
I immediately moved.
I think that,
holy shit! It's on my face is in there. Oh, I did it again.
Sorry, let's try that again. So I think that a lot of people find the community when they've been spurned. Mm-hmm. They've found somebody who doesn't like them back after a certain period of time. And most importantly, what happens to them is they come asking questions. Why doesn't this person like me back? What can I do to get them back? And ultimately, our goal here is to teach them why it's not that important to get that person back. It's important to work on yourself.
Yep.
Because ultimately, women don't define you. You define you.
Yeah, this goes back to the mission episode we did just recently, actually. Don't make women your mission. Your mission should be something that is going to last through your life. Now, you can change missions, now and then, but yeah, it should be something you're going to be dedicated to. It's your purpose. And you do not make women your purpose. That's a fast track to frustration, some mental health issues if things go really sideways, kind of like what we're talking about tonight.
It's fine to change your mind as long as it's not a new woman.
Yeah. You got it. So here, I have a bunch of show notes we did in prep. I sent you those as well written. So signs of when someone is struggling with codependency. There's a handful right off the top. When you derive your self-worth from what you do, not who you are. You have difficulty asking for what you need. You depend on others to make you feel happy. You feel joy only when loved ones are happy too. And you look to others for answers because you don't trust yourself. There's a lot to unpack just in these 5 statements. One of the ones that caught my attention here was when you have difficulty asking for what you need, a lot of guys, especially in this community, they find the community because they're so self-censored. They're not confident. They're not outgoing in some sense where they just don't give themselves permission to be happy on their own. And in a lot of cases, they don't even know what would make them happy because they've derived other people's happiness as their own means of fulfillment.
Yeah, it's honestly the majority of the guys that are in the Discord that we're talking to are encountering that. And I've just been trying to shed the light on it because I had, personal experience with it. And then, meeting Written in person and going on the experience that, we had. Can we talk about that openly? I don't know if that's PG-13 or not.
Absolutely, man. Go for it.
Well, Written and I had found each other. He recognized me and was like, this guy might be a sadist. There's something wrong with this dude. I'm not exactly sure. So I was interesting because I wrote in a really feminine, crazy way where I just had a lot of emotion. So we kept in touch. And then when I started going through my divorce, I reached back out to him and I was like, hey, I got banned from the Married Red Pill. I don't have anyone to talk to. Can you help me? And he's like, sure. So we started chatting via the internet. And then he's like, hey, why don't we just talk to each other on the phone? So we did that. It's like, he's like working me up. And then he's like, let's do a FaceTime. And then he's like, why don't you come over? So just one thing led to another. And then I ended up at his house and,
Again,
weird.
pretty hard.
It got pretty weird.
Let's back the train at the tracks here for just 1 second. So you got banned from MRP. What was up with that?
It was during my divorce and I was really emotional.
Tell me
your anger phase, huh?
Tell me your name.
I'm sorry. Oh, the Wednesday retard. That's what I was known as because I would write posts and one was on a Wednesday and I was basically wrote something on Monday and that was Wednesday. He's like, dude, you wrote something on Monday. It's just Wednesday. This guy's retarded. Something along those lines. But no one really took me seriously. Everyone kind of thought I was trolling or just making up a ton of stuff for fun. Like they didn't really get me. And one of the mods and I bumped heads and I can't say what I said to him because it's not PG-13 and it was in the mod chat. So it was basically very, very bad choice of words to use in a mod chat when that guy's a mod. So they banned me perma because he banned me for like 30 days over something that I felt was ridiculous and everyone agreed with me. He was
okay. I think I remember what you're talking about now. I vaguely remember we talked about this previously over on the server.
Yeah, so I was super codependent with Married Red Pill. I needed Married Red Pill, or I was like, I can't do this on my own. Like I need these people. And even when I met Ritten, I felt a sense of like, I need this guy to help me. I needed to attach myself to someone else because I couldn't deal with my own problems.
Gotcha.
And that's what led me to talking to him. And he's like, dude, you don't need to do that. Like you have yourself, man. Why don't you just love yourself instead of hating yourself? Just trust yourself and do the things.
That's good advice. And that kind of gets to the other side of the notes I have right here. I'm bringing them back up again because they are going to kind of move things forward a little bit. And what you just talked about, the codependency with MRP. So codependency is when you are so dependent on another person, or in this case, the subreddit, that it becomes an addiction. And the internet is very addictive. You see this with guys getting sucked into internet porn, video games. It's the gamification of society. And I suspect part of that is why you were on this forum doing that.
Yeah, 100%. I'm still addicted to it to this day. It's fun. I really enjoy it. It's a way to help people and also disconnect. It's like doing a drug, but helping people.
That's fair.
All right, so we can resume right here. So the thing that I diagnosed about Daddy Thunder was that ultimately his problems came to him not knowing who he was. And that is one of the biggest poisons you could possibly have as a man, is having somewhere to go, but not knowing really where you're going. Meaning that where you think you're going is a meaningless place. It's a nihilistic problem. So when I saw him posting on MRP, and I saw him posting on his own your shit posts, I was like, this is a guy who really, he's a driven guy and he wants to go somewhere, but he has nowhere to go.
So he was nihilistic, didn't really know where he was going. He was listless. He thought he may have had the direction he was going in, but he really wasn't. He was just kind of spinning his wheels.
It was someone else's direction. That was the problem. And then I didn't know what to do. And I was like, well, what direction do I want to go in?
Yeah, and a big issue with the red pill is that you start pigeonholing everything that you learn or that you experience into red pill concepts. It's, oh my God, this must be a lack of abundance mentality. This must be this. This must be that. And you start posting, you start getting compulsory with it. There's certain types that really get fixated on it, and I could identify that with DTC. So when he got banned and he messaged me, I just told him, I was like, look, man, at a certain point, you're gonna have to figure out who the fuck you are, and there are many people left who are willing to tolerate you because you're very aggressive and you've gone too far, man.
Do you have anything to add to that, DTC?
No. Perfect.
I'm looking over the notes right here. So it's interesting how this all kind of just congeals together. I'm not sure if codependency is even the right word in that, what you were just describing. a lack of self-esteem is definitely part of it. When people get obsessed with their partners, a fear of independence is another one.
Well,
Technically, I guess these are emotional codependency symptoms, but
you've got some good points, Joe. But what I think what it really came down to is that DTC had a low self-esteem partner, and ultimately his journey to higher self-esteem wasn't. It's not that he was just beaten down. It's that ultimately trying to wrestle with a low self-esteem partner as a person who's trying to better themselves is a really, really difficult thing.
But the bigger piece of it too is that I felt it was my duty to make her happy. And that's what codependency really comes down to, is you take other people's things that are theirs, that they're responsible for, and you're like, that's my responsibility. And if I don't do it, and I'm a bad person, and you start building shame. And that's really the killer, is that shame is what fucks you up. Oh, I can't say.
Well, you just did.
I said it twice, actually. But shame is really the killer. That's when you start hating yourself. And what was happening to me is over the 10 plus years of marriage, I started hating myself because of the decisions that I was making, and I couldn't see a future in that life anymore. And I started contemplating suicide, and that's when I decided, time to get a divorce. I'm done here. I can't do this.
Did you ever find yourself getting browbeaten into doing what they wanted because that's what they wanted? You knew it would make them happy, so you just swallowed your pride and just kind of went with the flow?
Yeah, that's literally my whole marriage, was trying to appease her.
I'll tell you right now, almost everybody I know, I don't say everybody, but the majority of the people I know that are married do this same exact thing, in at least in piecemeal. And you even see this. It's the culture. It's the socially acceptable thing to do. A happy wife, happy life. That bullshit.
Exactly.
That's not good. If you've got to curtail your own wants and needs just to make the other person happy, so you have a smooth relationship, that's completely one-sided. That is not healthy at all.
Exactly. Why I would say, don't get married. It's probably not a good idea. You basically lose all of your power. I mean, if you're going to have a girl move in, you're going to lose a lot of power. It's really difficult to live with a girl. When you live by yourself, you can really do whatever you want, and you don't have to deal with someone else's stuff all the time. But when you're with a woman, they're very emotional beings, and they need a ton of attention. So I found that I was giving all of my attention to my 3 kids, my job, and trying to lift and do jiu-jitsu, that she wasn't getting enough attention, and then she would act out. So you have to make sure you have enough time and attention to hand out if you're going to go down that road. It's really tough to manage, especially when you have someone who has low self-esteem and is BPD. Like, borderline girls have no self-esteem, and they need you to tell them that they're amazing and hype them up, or they just completely fall apart. They have no self-esteem.
Bring back memories.
Low self-esteem starts reflecting on you as well. Like, when I first brought DTC over here, he was genuinely amazed. The question he kept asking was like, why are you being so nice to me? Like, what am I doing for you? Because it was the conditioning of that type of relationship.
Yeah, I felt like everything was conditional, and I couldn't understand why people were being so kind to me. And also, we were on MDMA, so the amount of emotions.
Conditional or transactional?
Transactional, and also conditional, I guess. I don't know if there's a difference. What's the difference?
It's I guess I see it as 2 different things. Conditional is where they're going to be nice to you with the expectation that you're going to be nice to them, or they want something out of you. Where it gets back to covert contracts. And I guess
transactional is where it's built in, where unless you get the pro from the quo, i.e., unless there's an opposite reaction, you have a problem with it. Whereas conditional is you have an established boundary or relationship, but it builds up over time.
That's fair. Conditional. Yeah, transactional is more what I was getting towards, where this quid pro quo, that kind of aspect.
Yeah, in the early stages, it's all transactional. Unless you get something back immediately, you're like, I'm not going to invest anything more in this person. But as you get deep into a relationship, the potentially toxic part is you get to a point where things build up over time, and it's like this accountant's T account. It's like, well, I have this many debits, so you owe me.
Oh, geez, it's like the meme from what's that TV show? Rick and Morty. with the kid holding up the little stamps. This is how many times I've respected you. You know, you see it's that mentality you see with like the male feminists, these guys online who they think if you supplicate and you look what we're talking about here, be that codependent guy who's giving them all the attention, all the validation, give, then they owe you something in return.
That's exactly what it felt like. And we literally, okay, so this is what was the breaking point of my marriage. We owned this house for 10 plus years. I had, sunk tons of cash into it. I had just rebuilt the upstairs, done, a new build out of multiple bedrooms for all the kids. It's beautiful. And that was supposed to fix our marriage, right? I'm an idiot. And I was like, okay, so I get it. We have 3 kids in one room, small house. I get it. Let's fix the problem. And then our sex life will be better, right? We'll be able to do whatever we want. That was the lie. And I bought it. And you can't negotiate desire. You can't negotiate sex with a woman. And the problem is that she was having sex with me to keep her job, basically. And her job was, taking care of the kids and having a house and getting all of the, cash and prizes, essentially.
I'm gonna throw this out there right now. Kids do not fix a relationship. Some people get in their head that if we just do this, we just do that. That ain't the way it works.
Yeah, then you have hormones, and then you have a pregnant woman, and no one wants a pregnant woman. So
no one wants a pregnant crazy woman. More importantly,
certainly, but all pregnant chicks are kind of crazy.
Yeah, hormones, they do a thing.
Right, it's very true. They do a thing. So anyway, this house thing happened, and it didn't end. It just more. I got an Excel doc. And it was like a line item of all the things she wanted that was over $100,000, like an Excel doc. And that's when I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to get out of this marriage. I don't know what to do anymore. So I went on relationship advice and I posted. Oof. And the first person was like, you need to go to Ask MRP. So I was like,
that's okay. Good. At least they steered you in the right direction.
Yeah. And so I went there and I got absolutely destroyed. Like it was very humbling because they just rip you apart. And I had no idea. I just wanted to prove to them that I was awesome and I wasn't this horrible person that they were saying I was. Like, that's why your wife doesn't want to have sex with you, is because you're a loser. And I couldn't deal with internet people telling me that. That made me very upset. So I had to defend myself.
Britton, was that you? Did you tell him that? That sounds like something you would tell him.
It might have been at one point, but it depends on when we met.
Gotcha.
I really wish I had my original posts. I'm very sad that I deleted them, but it was a moment of feminine rage.
Yeah, because before we did this, I looked in my inbox and I realized that they've been deleted, which is unfortunate. But basically, it boiled down to this: it was DTC had figured out the lifting, had figured out the game part of it, and thought that he could dominate and subjugate his wife, and that would fix everything.
But what I didn't realize is that a woman like her can't accept that. Like, she can't. And there had been so much, disrespect in the marriage between the both of us. Like, we'd ripped each other to shreds over the years. It was mutual. I had lost her respect. And the moment you lose the respect of a woman in a relationship, that's like stage 4 cancer. And I never got the I love you, but like, what is it? I love you, but
I'm not in love with you.
I'm not in love with you. I never got that speech, but I could tell there was something very, very, very wrong. And one of her reasons, she's like, I can't go back to work because I might have sex with my coworkers. I was like, oh, okay. By all means, I guess you should not have a job then.
Jesus.
Solid argument.
Man, that's crazy.
So that was her fun game, is she would run girl game on me and run Dread. So then once I learned about Dread, I was like, oh, so that's what you've been doing all these years. I just ran Dread on her.
That's mental illness.
Oh no, it's psychotic.
Whoops.
She was always shopping for dudes and telling me how much she gets hit on, and
that's not healthy for a relationship, obviously.
So the type of girl who laughs really loud at a bar, and you like turn to be like, who is that girl laughing? Like, what? Why is she laughing so loud?
To get attention.
Yeah, it's that girl, like the histrionic types.
Yep. Yeah, it's a personality flaw.
I'd say disorder, but
disorder for sure. So that's the thing. I didn't know this about myself, but the reason I married this person, this is going to blow your mind. I was friends with her for about 6 months. She essentially stalked me, and then I was like, all right, let's get married. And then 3 months later, we got married.
I thought you were gonna say 3 months later you knocked her up. It's like, oh geez.
Nah, that's what my parents
No,
thought.
he's way dumber than that.
Yeah, no, I am
So wait a second. You guys only knew each other for about 9 months at that point when you got married.
something like that. I don't know the exact timeline, but dude, it was literally, I got poached.
Yeah, you got sniped, bro.
If the young men out there don't understand how Dominican women work, I'll just clue you in.
Hey, well, bro, it's not just Dominican women.
Well, this is very specific to Dominican culture. And the reason I know is because I have developed a fetish for Dominicans, and I've talked to them extensively about this. They raise their daughters, the second generation ones who come from the Campesina or out in the middle of nowhere, not the rich ones in the city, but like the hood rich ones. They come here and like, because they used to have the space, they want to have that lifestyle for their children. And they raise them like little spoiled rich kids and then teach them how to look really good and how to go out and poach a man. And her mom wanted her to marry like a baseball player because, that was her play. And it didn't work out that way. And she ended up marrying me, and her mom was, real mad at her for doing that. And so I thought that if I just got her away from her mom, she would be okay because I'm Captain Save-A-Ho, which once again is codependency. Like, I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to save the day. That was the whole allure for me because I was a narcissist. I didn't actually really like the girl that much. But what we did agree on was a lifestyle together. We both wanted to have multiple children. I wanted her to homeschool. I wanted to have her be just a housewife. I was super into the idea. I didn't realize what was going to happen with it. I didn't play out any of the implications. It was someone else's dream that they told me about that I thought sounded cool and just copied it because I couldn't think for myself because I'm a codependent.
This is one of the things we talked about in the mission episode. It was, I think, in the back half, was that people get more in love with the idea of something than the thing itself.
Exactly.
They want, you want a boat. Really, you like the idea of having a boat. You don't want a boat. It's a pain in the ass. You got a lot of maintenance. Now, maybe you're a mechanic and that's your thing, but for most people, they want in the case of your ex, you were more into the idea of her and the type of relationship you wanted than the reality of it. And you see a lot of this with women too, where they love the idea of getting married, not being married.
So, Joe, what we're talking about psychologically is a very straightforward concept, which is co-idealization, which is the idea of building a fantasy that's dependent on the other person.
Oh, yeah.
And understanding co-idealization is a very important part of understanding, I'd say, certain types of male psychology, but most female psychology. If you build a fantasy, which is somebody who you're not, or just somebody who's exists in your head, and you go after that person, then there's an inherent disappointment on the other end of that equation. And a lot of people, men and women alike, but especially women, tend to get trapped in the co-idealization process.
Yep, there's a lot of overlap with what you're saying with the symptoms of and characteristics of emotional codependency. You seek to control the other person. There's fear. You fear the independence of the other person. You're obsessed with the other partner, and then there's too much need for approval, which we've already talked about.
What's up, Kitty? Yeah, that was the thing. We had a very controlling, weird relationship in that I wasn't comfortable with her doing things. She wasn't comfortable with me doing things. Like, we were together all the time. And it created this weird creepiness where we couldn't have our own sets of friends. We had to have the same friends. And once I started getting my own friends and trying to disconnect from her, that's when things started getting really bad because all of the fear of abandonment started popping up. And, if you find a girl who's a codependent, you should probably not, get into a long-term relationship with her. The clingy girls, like, I'm a fucking idiot.
Well, and the nasty part about co-idealization is once you break it, then there's nothing left. And the only alternative is either a new co-idealization or to demonize you, which is really not fun.
And it's funny, right here, the two bullets: the fear of independence of the other person, and often blaming the other person, the partner. These are, it's crazy how much this is just it's a thing. I wish there was a way that guys could learn this naturally when they were younger so they can avoid these pitfalls. Unfortunately, these are not lessons guys just learn.
Well,
not
I
until
think
you're
some of
older.
us have to learn by a real life.
Yep. Well, hopefully our mistakes, our lessons, can inform you guys watching this, listening to this, so you can avoid making the mistakes that we did. Some people's purpose in life is to be an example to others of what not to do. And I got divorced. I got married and divorced. I had all those mistakes. DTC, learn from our mistakes so you don't repeat them.
So let's branch the topic out. DTC, when did you learn to like yourself? So let's branch the topic out. DTC, when did you learn to like yourself?
Well, I learned to love myself. I think I always generally liked myself. I was, attractive. I made good money. People generally seemed to like me. So I liked myself. The issue was I didn't really love myself. And I think there's a big difference.
Can you describe what the difference would be to you?
It's an inward thing. It's the shame that's there. This deep shame that I wasn't a good person. It just blocked me off from accepting myself. And when you don't accept yourself, you can't behave properly. You're always trying to do things for other people, or you just feel unhappy about yourself. And I woke up unhappy, most days this year until I, flew out to meet Ritten and had an experience. And then since that time, I've been happy almost every day. And I have a little mood tracker where I write down the things that I did that day and how I felt. Because I used to numb myself. I just got drunk all the time and never used to think about anything. I would block off all the feelings. And I was like, yeah, I don't feel anything. But I just stuffed them down. And then I started thinking about how I felt and feeling it. And I was like, wow, I really feel terrible. And that led me to asking a lot of questions like, well, how do I fix this? And a lot of it goes back to childhood traumas. And Ritten has experience with this. He's done this himself with a person who knows how to walk them through it and ask the right questions. So they're both really good at helping you deal with stuff that you're not even quite sure of. They can ask you questions and tease things out of you to provoke you to respond a certain way and then ponder different thoughts. And Ritten, you're going to have to explain all the science and with MDMA because I don't understand it. But essentially, it allows your brain to work in a way where it normally wouldn't, and you connect neural pathways that you couldn't before.
So it's fairly straightforward. So the way that it works is ultimately your ego, i.e. who you think you are, tends to get in the way of any sort of change. Your ego is invested in being the same person that you were yesterday and the day before that and the day before that and the day before that. So the reason why I am particularly hyped on psychedelics as a way to help people who are in particular circumstances. Again, if you have a mental illness, it will simply exacerbate them. But if you have somebody who can guide you through and make you feel comfortable, then specifically what it does, and it varies by the type of substance that you're on, is it pushes your ego out of the way and allows you to confront yourself as a person, as a neutral arbiter in your own self-engagement. And what I mean by that, and don't get me wrong, we're getting a little deep here, but that's fine. That's the purpose of the podcast, is if your defense mechanisms aren't in the way, then you have a chance to ask yourself, why do I think these things? Why do I behave this way? Why don't I like myself? And you can't honestly answer those questions if you're not ready to ask yourself them.
You know what this actually strikes me as is a modern day version of a vision quest.
It's absolutely a vision quest.
Instead of smoking a pipe out in the desert, where you guys are doing something a little bit new agey, I guess. But
it sounds silly because quite frankly, Joe, you're pretty neurotypical, which is good. You don't need this shit. But I think there are a lot of people who come to the red pill, and I'm not by no means advocating them to take substances, particularly street substances. That's just very dumb. But a guided source, if you've had particular traumas, through this manner of administration can be very beneficial, simply because it puts all the bullshit you've lived out of the way. And it gets you to ask questions like, why are you being so nice to me?
Right, because that's the best part. I didn't have to be, and a lot of the guys are like this too. They can't ask questions or be real because they're so afraid of what other people will think of them. And you don't care what anyone thinks about you when you're on MDMA. You just feel love and you feel loved. So you can express yourself completely. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for how I was going to feel. I thought it was going to be totally different. And it really opened my eyes up to emotions in a different way.
And to be fair, I could talk a lot of guys through this completely sober, and I see your facial expressions, Joe, and they're fair.
No, I'm thinking about something different. The way you just described that, where you just couldn't even talk to people normally, and I used to be that way. I could not approach a stranger just to ask them what the time was. I had that. I don't want to bother them. I was too nice, too caught up in my own head, too worried about what people would think if I'm going to disturb them. Just for asking the time, or directions, or the weather, just really innocuous stuff. And I had to get out of my comfort zone and not worry about what other people think. That was my big roadblock for a lot of time, for trying to get out of my head and get out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, and what you're describing is very important, which is the difference between the external and the internal dialogue. Your internal dialogue was very fucked up, and your external dialogue you had practiced, because your external dialogue can be practiced. It's a character that you play when you go out and meet people, and it works for you to a certain extent. But until you can fix your internal dialogue, a lot of guys will really, really, really struggle.
In the pickup community, this is where they have the distinction between outer game and inner game. You can practice the outer game all you want, but if your inner game is still crap, it's always going to shine through. So it's like polishing a turd. You got to get your head straight, and what's between the ears matters as much as what's on the outside, probably more so. Because if you're buff, you dress well and all that, and 6 foot tall, you got all the externalities on lockdown. But if your head is still mush, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what made me unattractive, because I had all those things. I had all the other things going, except that emotionally, extremely weak, and I depended upon other people to make me happy. And girls do not want needy men. That's gross.
Oh, yeah. This is what's interesting too, is like the actual reverse is true in a lot of cases as well. You don't have to be good looking, tall, what have you. There's plenty of obese guys who are really successful with women because they got their shit together. They've got solid frame. They've got good game. So they've got it where it counts between their ears. So now don't get me wrong. If they were tall, if they were fit, they might actually do better and they'd have better results.
Don't give those fuckers any ammo, Joe.
It's
Look,
it's a combination of factors.
The point is that competition and conversation with other men is really the solution to your problems. Simply because other men who have their shit figured out will not tolerate your nonsense.
It's a lot. It reminds me of women who are friends with guys because, women are blah. No, it's because the women won't put up with your bullshit. The guys want to hook up with you, so they're going to be more forgiving.
Well, I mean, in their nature, they have to test you. That's the whole biological purpose. They're the ones who get to choose who to reproduce with. So ipso facto, their skills are a little bit better defined in that regard. But that said, if you're a fucking weirdo, everyone will put you to the side.
Oh, yeah.
The solution is not to take MDMA. The solution is to figure out who the fuck you are and be confident in that person. And that is a simple but very, very hard thing to do.
So how would you go about resolving that?
I've done it a couple different ways. In DTC's case, we've sort of walked through how that goes. For other people, it's really a matter of not giving them, for particularly men, I would say it's a lot about not giving them space to create nonsense, to not do things. One of the things, I've even told people, like, one of the funny pickup lines I've given people on online dating is like, be like Nike and just do it. If you throw out something that's funny but approachable, people will respond to it. And in the same way, it's just, what I tell people is that everything is actually a choice. If you really sit down and think about it, Everything that you like about your life is a choice. You chose to do it. If you continually make choices that are positive for your self-esteem and who you are as a person, then it becomes natural. It becomes a matter of, there's a system to it. So there's unconscious incompetence where you're a retard and you don't know it. There's conscious incompetence where you're a retard and you know it. There is conscious competence where you're starting to get it, but you still have to pay a lot of attention. And then there's unconscious competence where you're just doing it, where you're just living it.
Yep.
And once you get to that last part, then it stops being so hard. Because there are these guys, there are these intermediate red pill guys who are like, so what? So I have to hold frame and fucking pack shit test forever. It's like, no, dude, at some point you'll just get it. And it won't be this hard. You won't even have to try.
Literally, that's why we talk about the Matrix. It's like when you're ready, you won't have to dodge bullets, bro. It'll just happen naturally because that's who you are. It's
that transition from synthetic to natural game as well, if you think of it in pickup terms. It tracks to the self-esteem bit as well, because one of the notes was that, self-esteem is built little by little and strengthened through rewarding, fulfilling activities. From what we've talked about in the 100 series on the Red Pill University 100 series, confidence is built through competence. And what you were just talking about, the unconscious competence, that is like the end game goal. That's where you guys should be going to. But that conscious competence is where it starts. You've got to go through the steps and do the work and come out the other side in that natural, holistic improvement.
Well, so Joe, someone told me something funny about my writing today, which is that there are certain people on TRP who you read their writing and you feel their swagger, where there's a swagger behind it that's just like, you can listen to this, I don't really care. Maybe you take it, maybe you don't. And I quizzed the guy a little more, and his ultimate confession was, ultimately, there are people who get it and there are people who don't. But the people that you follow are the people who not only get it, but it's just spilling out the side. Like the analogy that I made is like, when I pull up to a place, if you think about abundance, like I have there's just a million, you think about the McDonald's fucking plastic balls, like in the playpen, like that's my abundance. No, I know, and it's funny. It's supposed to be funny. Like I can give some of my plastic balls to you because I don't give a I have so many, it doesn't matter to me. Like me spending time on you doesn't matter to me because I've got so much of it. And it's the same way. I know it makes you raise your eyebrows, doesn't it? Look, let me hammer this point home, is that it's not hard for me to help you because I've got so much of it. It's just there. It's spilling out everywhere I go. The reason why it's easy for me to stick around and give advice is because I genuinely want these guys to succeed.
There's more to it than that, but yeah.
But really, I'm selective, of course, but really what it comes down to is I've got so much that it's just there. It's there for you to take. And it takes nothing for me to give that to you.
And you cannot have abundance if you don't actually love yourself, because you'll have nothing to give. That's a huge problem. You can't give to girls if you're trying to take from them because you're needy. You have to already love yourself, already be confident, already have all the bouncy balls to just go everywhere, and then just share. If you don't have any, you can't share. You're just trying to take them from them. Like, hey, can I borrow some of your balls? That sounds weird.
Yeah, no, you're dependent on girls' balls, basically.
Yeah, so weird. And honestly, that's what I would do. I would energy vampire on girls. I'd be like, well, I don't have much to give you, but I can take. I can do that.
Yeah, the energy vampire, that is something that speaks to me, because I think we've all been there at one point or another. And looking back in the past, I remember when I used to do that, and it's just like, oh, so cringy when I catch myself, thinking back in those days.
I figured it out because I started realizing how attractive I was. She kind of like red pilled me and taught me how to dress. Yeah, taught me how to dress and was like, you need to go to the gym. I started training jujitsu on my own, which was my thing. And then I started working out. And then all of a sudden my SMV was way higher than hers. And she had created a huge problem for herself. And that caused tremendous anxiety. So I got a job where I was working with a lot of women, and she couldn't see me work with these women or what I was doing with them. And I do overnights in hotels, drinking with these women, and she wasn't there. And that is when things started going crazy.
What I was going to ask is, why didn't she improve her own SMV?
Lots of different reasons, health problems, and also having kids. So once she had our last kid, then she, put in some work. She had always worked out and stuff. She wasn't lazy, but just, when you're 30 years old as a woman, you start declining, and it's harder to bounce back from a pregnancy when you're almost 30. And then once you hit over 30, it gets worse. And then for men, like, we just start peaking at 35. So the SMV battle between 30 to 35 is very favorable for men.
Oh, yeah.
But funny enough, when I filed for divorce, she got in the best shape of her life.
No, of course.
Well, I have a slight counterpoint to this, which is just that ultimately, like, the game, there's a reason why there's a fork between married red pill and red pill, which is that ultimately the game changes pretty significantly when you're willing to make a lifelong commitment. That having been said, you should, if one party is not honoring that commitment, you should be willing to bail.
Yeah, let's go back to the Married Man Sex Life primer from Athol K way back, like 2011. And it's kind of what you were just explaining. When you raise your SMV, if you're having problems in a relationship, it means probably in a lot of cases you got lazy, you lost frame. So what you do is you start rebuilding yourself up. And that may not fix the relationship. So if the relationship does fall apart, at least now you're rip roaring and ready to go for the next one. You just got to remember not to let yourself go.
Well, and the real lesson there is that regardless of what you've signed up for, you don't get to stop being a man.
Yeah.
That's the real lesson of that whole thing is by no means do you have my permission to start being a bitch.
Yeah. And a lot of the guys who find red pill, they find it because they're fat and overweight, and then all of a sudden their wives don't want to have sex with them. I was in a different boat, and that's why I was so flabbergasted. I was like, what is going on here? I'm 10% body fat, and I'm having problems in my marriage. My wife is rude and disrespectful, et cetera, et cetera. I just couldn't figure it out. There's so much more to it than that.
Can you describe what the disrespect was like for the listeners?
Yeah, typical BPD girl stuff, crying all the time, telling me I was a horrible person, saying I was Ted Bundy, just you're a narcissist, sociopath, you're the devil. She would write me these these emails when I was at work, or she would come upstairs and cry while I was trying to work. One time I was having a meeting and she was downstairs with all 3 kids in the car and put on Spotify, and then a playlist that were not hers were on her phone. And she assumed it was a girl that I had sex with was in her car and somehow paired her phone to the car, which doesn't make any sense, but that's how her hamster wheel started spinning. And so she's in the car having a full-on panic attack, calling me while I'm in the middle of a meeting. I had to get off the meeting and go down to the car and be like, what's going on? I was like, yeah, I don't know. I think your Spotify got hacked by Russians because this is all Russian stuff. I don't know what to tell you. Bye. It was stuff like that just got normal to me, where I was like just numb to it, and I just kind of laughed at it. But stuff like that, she would try to get me to fight her. She would do all kinds of crazy stuff. Go ahead.
And that's the flip of there's a certain limitation of frame, which is there's some shit you shouldn't put up with.
Yeah,
and
it was. Yeah.
No, but that was DTC's biggest problem, is that he saw it all as normal. He's like, no matter how crazy this bitch gets, it's fine. Women are completely crazy.
Well, that's all I'd ever experienced. I got married at 22, and I was celibate from 16 till 20. I had sex with like 2 girls in between that. So I had very little experience with women.
Now this goes back to, what was your experience growing up? Your parents, did they have any issues like this too? Because usually we learn from them first.
Yeah. So my father is a crazy person. My mom is a crazy person. They're both narcissists. And my dad he died last March. He had severe depression and anxiety and was on all kinds of medications. He was severely abused as a child. When I say severely, I mean severely in every way. So he grew up with a tough life, and, he tried to make stuff work. But ultimately, long story short, he ended up in a drug addiction, and my parents got divorced because of that. He couldn't deal anymore. He just got, basically, the doctors used to give out Vicodin like candy. Oh, he was taking a medication that was basically knocking him on his ass, so he couldn't work. And he was a mechanic, and he's like, well, if you want to work, you gotta take some Vicodin. So he's like, all right, I'll take Vicodin, not thinking it would be addictive, not thinking he would actually care about it.
Back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, 90s. I was like in 6th grade.
Yeah.
And so I saw a lot of dysfunction. That's just what I grew up with, was dysfunction. All around me was constant dysfunction. And so I was, at 15 years old, getting arrested multiple times. I had been incarcerated. I ended up in rehab for like 4 or 3 months. And then that's kind of what changed my streak. I decided, well, I guess getting arrested and doing drugs and drinking isn't working out for me. Might as well stop that for a while. And then I started lifting and taking care of my stuff and getting healthy.
And that's exactly what I saw in DTC, which is I saw a hard worker with the wrong goals.
Yeah. So then I didn't date women at all. I just made my own goals my thing. And that was like, those are my best years because I just worked on myself and tried to figure out how to be happy with myself.
Right.
But then once I started liking myself and I was in really good shape, I immediately realized girls were attracted to me. And then I felt the need to attach to one. And so I just, I had to be with someone. I felt like being alone didn't make me happy. I had to have a girl. I was obsessed with it. I felt like I couldn't be a real man unless I had a wife.
I'm sure a lot of the younger listeners hearing this are probably going to identify with that. Because they don't know any different. Yeah. They're raised with this whole Disney-fied view of relationships. That ain't what your goal should be, guys. Figure out what is best for you as an individual, but yeah, don't get codependent. Don't make women your mission.
And just to be clear, you can have healthy relationships with women, and that's not a Nawalt statement. It just means that if it's all about you, then you're doing it correctly.
Well, to be fair, it's not all about you, right? You take care of yourself to the point where you're happy, and then you have abundance, and then you give. But you still give. You share.
It's the same way that we say, like, don't text for logistics. Like, that's only advice for people who can't help but go AOL Instant Messenger on a bitch.
Right.
Like, that's not permanent. That's not permanent advice. At one point, you'll be like, actually, yeah, I can text bitches. It's fine.
So this is how I see it popping up in our community, at least, is that these guys who are having a hard time with chicks are getting all of their identity with the fact that they can pick up girls or not. So they look at guys like me or Ritten or whoever, Scepter, these guys who are constantly on Hinge or Tinder and just slaying. And they're like, well, I can't do that. I guess I'm not a good person. Well, it's not about that. That's not where you get your identity. You don't get your identity from having sex with women. They can't define you. They can't give you an objective view of yourself. Like, you have to do that. And then once you do that, then girls will want to have sex with you. That's your whole problem, is that you're trying to have them define you and give you value. And so they feel that, like, this is gross. You're so needy. And then they don't want to be with you.
Yeah, it's just
how counterintuitive that is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super counterintuitive, but you have to do the thing and stop worrying about the girl. Like, the girls I'm with a few girls now, and both of them I ignore completely because I'm busy. And I've told them that, like, if you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to talk to me anymore, but I can't dedicate all of my time and resources to you. I have shit to do.
Would you say that you have hoes in different area codes?
I have hoes in multiple area codes. It's true.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a good feeling.
Multiple states. Yeah.
See, that's abundance.
Right. And that's the thing too. I
don't think about them too much. Yep. He really doesn't.
No, I can't. I can't afford to. So the girls will say, "Did you miss me?" And I'm like, "Not really. A little bit. I missed your vagina."
Your vagina was nice. Mm-hmm. Really enjoyed the parts where we were having sex and hanging out, but you're a few hundred miles away, so that becomes a little complicated when I'm a few hundred miles away.
Right. Well, even the ones who are close, I have the ones that are, an hour away, but they're busy. They have things to do, schedule conflicts. You can't always hang out. Sometimes you got to learn how to be alone. So that's something that I'm trying to teach the girls I'm with is like, hey, if I'm not around you, it doesn't mean I don't like you. It just means I'm really busy. Like, you don't need to work yourself up into a tizzy because I haven't talked to you all day. If you really need my time and my attention, all you have to do is text and say, will you please call me? Chances are I'll probably call you. Just relax. And that helps them because girls are silly. They get all worked up.
Yep.
To be fair, DTC's game is fairly feminine. And I don't mean that in a denigrating way. It's just how it works for him.
Yeah, I self-identify as a lesbian. So let me talk about this because this is the flip side of it. This is where Codependency can actually be your friend.
All right.
If you find girls who are codependent and they have low self-esteem, they are the best for plates. Notice I said plates, not LTR. Right. High self-esteem girls are very hard to find, and you can, if no one out, if you guys want to read a great book, it's called Practical Female Psychology. In fact, that was the first book I read when I came to Reddit. I don't know why. I mean, I'm sorry, when I came to MRP. That was the first book I read.
I think it's in the in our reading list now.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I added that.
It's phenomenal. And there's a whole section at the end which talks about women who have high self-esteem or low self-esteem and how to find out. And there are tests that you can do. And it's essentially you mess with women and you abuse them verbally, or you do something in a way to see if they'll defend themselves and tolerate it, or if they'll draw a boundary. Girls with high self-esteem will draw boundaries at a certain point and they won't take abuse. Girls with low self-esteem will take whatever you can give and they'll keep coming back. They're like little sadists or little masochists.
Crack addicts.
Here's the part that I have a difficult time wrapping my head around, is that some of the most attractive women out there are the low self-esteem ones because they derive all of their identity from their good looks.
Well, if you think about it, it's not that complicated. Imagine that
it's counterintuitive.
Well, but Joe, imagine you and me. You know, we did things. We know ourselves. We have confidence in ourselves. We have to go out and chase. They just get presented with opportunities again and again and again. And from like the age of, I don't know, whenever they grew tits or ass or whatever you want to call it, from the age of puberty on, it's been a constant defensive mechanism. So at what point do you get a chance to grow self-esteem from that? Not really.
This is where we get the women are the, what is it, the most mature teenager in the house or something like that. I forget the actual
oldest teenager in the house.
Oldest teenager in the house. That's where this comes from. And we get a lot of shit for this, but, and I've talked about this before. I've dated from 19 to 44. Maturity doesn't change that much. That's a large age group or age span. I don't personally see a big gulf in maturity.
Canceled.
I do see, what's that?
Canceled.
Yeah. So
Joe, I hate to tell you, you're canceled now. You're banned from Twitter. You're banned from Instagram. You're banned from Facebook.
So I actually had this conversation at lunch today with OLTR. I essentially said that women, you know, she was talking about herself as a 16-year-old girl. I'm like, yeah, you're probably the exact same emotional maturity you were as a 16-year-old girl. You realize that, right? And she's like, that is not true, DTC. You know that's not true. I was like, okay. That's fine.
I would say that there's a small improvement, maybe. It's different. From 19 to 44, it's just things do change. Don't get me wrong. There are,
of course.
It's like, really that I'm talking about when women are responding emotionally, and women don't always respond emotionally. They do have the ability to have logic, and I'm not saying that. And my girl she's an extremely intelligent person, and she doesn't typically react in emotions. She does get emotional, and then she goes in this 16-year-old girl version. And I can always tell when it happens, and I tell her, like, you're being a little bitch, stop it. And then she knows that, and then we fuck. It's fine. But if you don't know how to recognize that, that's when you get problems. And
if you play along with that and you pretend it's like a work conversation, ugh.
Yeah, you can't. So that's what happens to as another side note, when girls turn into little children, you have to treat them as little children. It's super important. You can't take it seriously. My kids flip out and they, sit on the couch for 5 seconds. You know what I do? I go have fun and I hang out with the other kids, and then they realize I'm missing out on fun. I like fun. I'm going to stop being a little bitch and go have some fun. And that's all you do with girls. You don't have to fight with them.
Right there. Well, it's a parable right there. You went off with another one. So you have plates. So when one girl's acting up, you just go to the other plate,
So true. It's hilarious. That sounds
parable of DTC dark. And
that sounds dark, but I like that.
It only sounds dark if you haven't lived it. Once you lived it, you realize it's fine. It's not a big deal.
It's totally fine.
Let me tell you a little story, because there's a corollary to this.
Yes.
You know what? I think we'll save it after. Now, you know what? I started it. I'll tell you.
Come on.
All right.
Do it.
So many years ago, this must have been about 10 years ago, I started seeing this girl, and we've been dating for like a year. And went off and started spinning another plate, another one after that. And the first girl started giving me a lot of these problems. It's like, all right, well, I'm not going to deal with you. I'll start spending time with the other ones. And it's funny. It was like this weird shift in myself and in the way she responded to it. So instead of giving into her emotional BS by just, nope, no, thank you, going over here, all of the problems I had changed just like that. They all went away.
So female perception is real. It just doesn't work like Disney wants to tell you it works. It doesn't mean that she knows what you're thinking. It just means that it operates on a very specific frequency.
Oh yeah. I think in this context, this case, she was picking up on me having other girls on the side. It was not exclusive.
It's a social perception.
There was a perception. She picked up on what I was putting down, even though I was not intentionally causing dread. But the very fact that I was spending my time elsewhere, not with her, and it was whenever she acted up, I was like, no, I don't need to see anymore. I'm over here doing my own thing. That withdrawal of attention for the bad behaviors fixed the bad behaviors to a moderate effect.
Well, because ultimately your currency, as we say, is your time and attention. And if your time and attention is valuable and you take it away, then the only thing they can assume you're doing is spending it with other bitches because they know you're good for it.
Otherwise, why would they be with you in the first place?
Right.
I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it up, actually. We are an hour in. Do you guys have any final thoughts on emotional codependency, low self-esteem, any ways to check yourself when you're falling down that rabbit hole?
Yeah, I'm really codependent, and I wish Mike was here. Like, I'm really upset about it. I'm still struggling.
See, it never goes away, Joe. Never goes away.
Yeah. Well, when we get off here, we'll go track him down and guilt trip him.
All right, Joe, hit us with a couple of your funsy questions because those are a great way to end it, and we need probably like 5 to 10 more minutes of content.
The funsy questions. All right. So this one is for DTC since we've never really gotten to do the rush questions. All right. Favorite cut of steak?
Ribeye.
My man. All right. Yeah. If you're going to go to the beach, what is your favorite beach activity?
Getting really high and sitting in a chair.
And drinking slut water.
Yes. And drinking slut water. Which,
by the way, for the uneducated masses among us, slut water, all hard seltzers are thence to be known as slut waters. You're welcome. Just start saying it. It's not a big deal.
Now, when you're out on this beach, morning, noon, or night?
10 a.m. to 2 p.m. where it's the hottest, so I can get a tan.
Now, I probably already know the answer to this, but we're going to say tits or ass?
Ass.
Yep.
Thanks to my dear ex-wife.
Yeah,
she had an ass on her, right, Written?
Titty gang, but yeah, she does.
I know you're titty gang, but I'm just saying she had an
It's all right. I'm just representing. It's not a big deal.
So I kind of went on the boat beach thing. What is your favorite hobby? Bar none.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, absolutely. But if I had to pick one that wasn't that, it would be hiking. Like, I like to climb mountains. I'm going to do it next month. I'm going to do a big one.
Like rock climbing style? Like where?
No, just like hiking, where you just
hiking.
Extensively long hike up a mountain. I just like to get to the top of things.
Yeah, you see a top and you're just like, I can get there.
Look at the ground, and I think one step. Just pay attention to your next step. And it's kind of a metaphor for life, is that you're not really focused on the top of the mountain. You're just thinking about what you're doing in that moment. And you're not thinking about all the stuff ahead. Just, I'm going forward now, and I'm enjoying this moment right now. You do that for an extended period of time, and then you hit the top, and it's amazing.
All right. Your favorite memory from when you were 13?
Ugh.
Got you thinking, don't I?
13 wasn't great. Right. Skateboarding. That was my favorite memory. I skateboarded a ton. I was addicted. That's all I did.
Now, getting back to the mountains and the hiking, have you ever considered hiking the Appalachian Trail?
I have, and it's batshit crazy. Can't do it.
Bro, let's just get strapped and do it. I got my CCW. We're ready to rock.
How long is that? You can't go through certain state parks. Like where I'm at in Maryland, you can't bring even with a CCW, you can't bring firearms in the state parks.
Yeah, but there's, getting caught and brandishing and all those other things.
Yeah, I'm not into that. But one thing I do want to do that I have to do, it's on my bucket list, is to climb a mountain and then camp on top of said mountain and then do mushrooms on said mountain.
That sounds like it's dangerous if you fall.
No, that sounds
Chill.
awesome.
You chill. All right, Ritten, let's do it.
Yeah, that sounds fucking dope.
All right. You my Sherpa.
I like that. It is written is the Sherpa.
In many ways, I am, Joe. In many ways, I am.
Let's see. Any final thoughts for you there, Written?
I hope that people hear this and they take something from it that makes them do something, that makes them pick a direction and go in it. If they could, what I've said this many times. If this gets one guy to lift, if it gets one guy to just talk to a girl in the grocery store, I would consider everything I've ever posted and everything I've ever done a victory.
I'll do you one more as well. In addition to that, if this resonated with you, and if you don't love yourself and you are codependent, or you do feel alone and unsupported, there's a place you can go. There are guys who can help you. Joe, where is that place?
Yes, you can find us on patreon.com/thefraternity. This is our private community. It's a blend of college fraternity and fraternal organizations, something like the Freemasons or the Moose Club, where we have live events once coronavirus is behind us, where we go out, we meet, we do training, mentoring. We do all of this online currently through our fraternity portal on Discord. Anybody can join the Discord. The link is down below in the description. But if you want to get access to the private content, the mentoring, the watch parties, and all this other fun stuff that we do, then yes, that is going to be the subscription model. It's $5 a month. It's not going to break the bank. So yeah, come on over, join us, hang out, meet the gang. It's good times.
It's the price of a cup of coffee for the month. Like, you can do it. It's not that bad.
My advice is worth it, boys. And I don't see a cent of it. So you're welcome.
Yeah, we do this for free because we actually really enjoy it. It's fun. It's enjoyable. And it's also enjoyable to see people come in and actually benefit from it. It's nice.
Yep. This is going into a fund we're going to use for events. But right now, yeah, no one's touched any of this. All right. So after a quick little break there, as Britton had to go get himself a slut water, I think we're approaching the end. I think we've covered all the stuff we wanted to talk about tonight. Are there any last thoughts?
Just read the sidebar and please lift, and I will take your questions. If you do those two things, I have immense patience for you.
And also, you gotta live it.